Patty's in the Dickens Museum today, and he is the inspiration for our company logo. In 1904, the government made it mandatory for commercial vessels to carry Admiralty charts, so that pretty quickly proved a threat to the three companies that were at that point operating. So Norrie and Wilson had already merged. So the four companies ended up merging and became Imray as it is today. Until the Victorian era, leisure sailing wasn't really a thing. People didn't go out sailing for sailing's sake. They did it because they needed to carry things around or transport goods. A few privileged did, but they had to make do with Admiralty charts or Imray blueback charts, which weren't aimed at the leisure sailor at all. From about 1850, clubs like the Royal Victoria and the Royal Cruising Club, and eventually clubs like this Little Ship Club, became a kind of focal point for leisure sailors to come and share knowledge and stories and ideas. And Imray began to build relationships with these clubs because they were, again, gathering information and beginning to publish it in kind of pamphlets and booklets. The ship club's predecessors most likely knew the Imrays when we were visiting them. At the helm in 1904 was William Wilson, my great-grandfather, and his fabulous moustache. And he was the person that really began to grow the kind of leisure side of the company. He built links with all sorts of fledgling organisations like the Cruising Association. Pilot books had previously kind of focused on the needs of big ships, and again he began to kind of develop leisure-focused pilot books and cruising guides. And my great-grandfather, Colonel Tom Wilson, wrote a book about the English Channel, which was published in the 1930s. He also began to grow a yacht delivery business, and he employed Frank Worsley, who was Ernest Shackleton's navigator on the Endurance Antarctic voyage. But the Second World War, impending Second World War, curtailed that venture. Around that time, again, Tom Wilson had the foresight to realise that being based in the city and the printworks in Hackney probably wasn't a sensible idea with the impending war. So he began to look for a headquarters outside of London that had a printing press, a local printer big enough to print Imray charts. So St Ives in Cambridgeshire is where he found those big printers, and Which House is where we moved to in 1939. It used to be a coaching inn, and it's still a quirky building to work in. It's kind of lots of small rooms, and we did a building project in the 80s to make it much more kind of suitable for modern office life. But yeah, it remains a bit like being on a ship. You know, there are lots of kind of little passageways and alleyways and crooked stairways and run down to get things from the printers downstairs. It's a nice place to work. After the Second World War, the leisure sailing industry obviously began to flourish as naval captains returned home and as international travel became more accessible. Yacht owners began to want to explore places like the Mediterranean and the Caribbean, and we were working with sailors like Don Street as he was exploring those regions. We also grew our range to include fishing charts, and that was quite a flourishing part of our business until the 1970s, when the cod wars of the North Sea pretty much killed it off. Sorry, I keep forgetting to do this. As well as Imray, there are other kind of notable publishers that we work with now and we used to work with as well. So Adlard Coles is an obvious one. They are still run by Bloomsbury Publishing. They're probably our main competitor, but they are also one of our collaborators. The Shell Channel pilot was written by Adlard Coles. it was derived from a series of travel guides that the Shell Petroleum Company did for motorists in the 1930s. They were kind of beautifully illustrated picture books extolling the virtues of travel in England. So Adler Coles had the idea of doing the equivalent for the English Channel, and it was taken over by Fabulous Publishers and then eventually ended up with Imray, and Tom Cunliffe is at the helm of that one at the moment. We also began to work with sailing clubs like the Royal Cruising Club Pilotage Foundation, who wanted to publish their own works increasingly, and so we began setting up partnerships with them in the 70s and 80s, which continue today. So now we aim to be the gold standard information for leisure sailors. We aim to better what the official hydrographic offices do and what digital does. We've got distributors in 42 countries worldwide, and we continue to kind of build on that long network of collaborators and contributors. We've got a range of about 100 pilot books, which cover cruising ground worldwide, concentrated in the really popular sailing areas of the Mediterranean, Caribbean and Northwest Europe. We work with some of the kind of best sailing authors, so Rod and Lou Heichel, Tom Cunliffe, I've already mentioned, Clyde Cruising Club, and yeah, many more. We aim, as Wilsons, who aren't naturally sailors, to bring our cartography and design expertise to the table. So this fusion of kind of design and cartography knowledge and geographical knowledge combined with the sailing knowledge that we get from our contributors seems to be the magic that makes the books and charts work and sell. High design standards are really important to us as much as high data and sailing standards. Charts are also seen as the gold standard for the leisure market. We've got a range of about 250 large paper charts, about 25 chart packs, and we've got a navigation app called Imray Navigator, where you can buy raster charts. We also distribute the raster charts on other people's apps. We're the only independent chart publisher in the world to be recognised by the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, which means that our charts can be used on coded vessels and any commercial vessels under 24 metres. There's an ongoing conversation with the MCA and with bodies like the Royal Institute of Navigation to extend that accreditation to digital charting, because we're conscious that everybody uses, or almost everybody uses digital charts as well as paper, and as it stands the leisure sector is completely unregulated for the use of digital charts, so all digital charts say not for navigation on them, despite the fact that most people navigate by them. So, you know, there's a lot of conversation at the moment about this with the MCA and with the UK Hydrographic Office. One of the reasons that we have the MCA certification is because we've got incredibly stringent quality control standards, and that's reinforced by ISO 9001 certification and all sorts of other certifications and documented workflow processes. That can help us maintain the quality of what we do. As well as our products, the Imray family, it kind of permeates everything that we do. So the wider family beyond the staff team of 25 extends to about 75 authors or groups of authors. And then, of course, our customers as well, we consider to be part of the Imray family. And we constantly ask customers for feedback, and we always try and, once verified, we always try and include that feedback within our products. So there's a lot of kind of listening and talking that goes on all the time, and we really appreciate any information that you send to us based on your experience. We've built relationships with some of the contributors over many years. So Rod and Lou Heichel first started working with Imray in the late 1970s, early 80s with my father Willie, and I've known him since I was a child. Tom Cunliffe's been working with us for about 30 years. But there are also a kind of newer, younger generation who I track down on Instagram and social media and all sorts of other networking places. Will Thompson has recently joined us as commissioning editor. He also runs something called Tide School and has 20,000 followers on Instagram. That kind of constant seeking contributors and content providers is a really key part of what we do as well. So we've got a team that talk to people and find the best sources of data all the time. We are beginning to explore ways of sharing the expert knowledge of the contributors in a more first-hand way. So rather than just through the narratives in pilot books, we've been playing around with some Facebook Live events during lockdown and also a series of podcasts that are kind of interviews that we do with the authors. And as we evolve, we're going to be trying to kind of share pilotage information in more forms, so audio, video, accessible ways that younger generations want to access information. So yeah, during lockdown we launched the Explore More with Imray podcast, which is on all your popular podcast channels. And that was a kind of series of interviews with expert cruising sailors about different cruising grounds, and they're definitely worth a listen. They're a kind of entertaining and informative place for inspiration before you sail. This is just a little zoom snapshot of the Imray team, or some of the Imray team. The kind of skills and expertise that we have in the staff team is quite extraordinary. So it ranges from digital product management knowledge to typography to graphic design, geographic information systems, data visualization specialists, editorial specialists, and then of course the operations staff and sales staff that support the operation. Between them, this fantastic team distill all the information that we get from the outside and they turn it into the products that we get today. They curate it, they make it coherent and engaging. One of our other kind of mission points is to always serve the latest data and to provide information that's as up to date as possible. Obviously, pilot books begin to go out of date once they're published, but we offer downloadable supplements so that you can check before you sail and get the latest information. We also are the only publisher to offer a weekly correction service or notices to mariner service outside of the hydrographic offices. That's quite a big undertaking. We receive thousands and thousands of notices every week, and we read out the information that's relevant only to big ships, and we again make that available on our website, and hopefully check their charts before they sail. Our charts are customised to the leisure sailor rather than to the shipping market. And in a minute I'm going to play a game to spot the difference. But we work really closely with cartographers, but also the kind of hydrographers and harbour masters and other sources of data beyond the hydrographic offices. Because the hydrographic surveys are mainly aimed at commercial ships, there are big swathes of the world where areas are attractive to leisure ships, particularly because they don't have a lot of commercial shipping. So west coast of Scotland, huge areas of the Caribbean, the Greek islands. The official data is old in many cases, and once you get inshore it's lacking as well. So we've got huge networks of local contacts that provide extra information on top of that. There's a kind of, we do get customers saying, well, you know, don't you just repackage the hydrographic office information? But this is a way of showing how we add to it and we curate it in a way. We'll try and use the points down here. It might be easier if I just move. So you can see there is no anchoring zone here because it's a commercial shipping anchorage. Here there's no marking. There are a whole load of facilities, small craft facilities here, show here is shown as unsurveyed. There's some depth in there. Useful facilities for small craft sailors, like the nearest source of fuel, will be shown on our charts, whereas you don't necessarily get those on the official charts. There somewhere is a small craft anchorage, which again isn't marked on the official charts. So those are just some of the differences that you might see, as well as the kind of obvious colour differences, like blue for land, green for land, and blue for deep water, which is the reverse of what the official charts do. So this idea about family continues with all of Imray's products, as well as our staff and community. We try and make the products feel like a family, and we cross-reference them. So there's data sharing between products. Chart packs include anchorage information and all sorts of other information from the pilot books and vice versa. I'm going to get into the geeky stuff briefly. This is how we make charts. We start off mapping an area with the extent of the chart that we want to show, so you can see where we might have passage charts, where we might focus in more closely on large scale charts. We just dump the outlines on a kind of generic map background. This shows the paper charts that we developed of that area, and that's just a zoom in showing more detail in that area. But this is the raw data that we get from the hydrographic offices. So it's dense.
You don't print that.
Yeah, it's not pretty to look at. When you zoom in and out on a vector chart, this is layered, but once you try and look at it all in one place on a paper chart, it just becomes a blur, and it's a nightmare. And that's what our cartographers do. They look at this data and decide what we should keep and what we should thin out. Luckily, quite a lot of that process is automated through our hydrographic production database. That's on the right, just shows the kind of list of source ENC cells, what they call electronic navigational chart cells. So that's what the hydrographic office survey, and then they turn them into charts, which they then put onto ECDIS chart plotters, the big ship chart plotters. The first step in the process is to make it look like an Imray chart. So we begin to add the Imray portrayal, as we call it, the colour scheme, and begin to make it look like a proper chart. We then trim the data to the boundaries of the chart that we want to print. We then begin to, you can't see it very well on this slide, but we begin to add the soundings over the top, and we only include soundings relevant to that scale of chart. So, and there are also a kind of element of soundings which we read out, so we don't bother showing soundings over about 30 metres in some areas, or we just spot them around here and there. Leisure sailors don't need that depth of information, and it just makes the chart look cluttered. So we then source additional data from the content in our pilot books, or in some areas we look at satellite imagery, we talk to local port authorities, and this kind of combination of data makes sure that we're perfect for leisure users. We do a final check for notice to mariners before we print, and then the final result is from the Imray chart. It goes through all sorts of quality control processes all the way through, so that we adhere to the kind of MTA accreditation, so that it can actually be published as a navigational chart. Beyond paper, there's no argument that digital is the future, and that there's an increasing demand for digital charts. So we have our Imray Navigator app. We've also got our Tides Planner app, which is available for use offline, and it's a really popular app tailored against the leisure market. Imray Navigator offers sets of raster charts by area, and it's got all sorts of overlays, like kind of navigational overlays that you'd expect from a chart looking at. It also includes AIS functionality and integrates with the Tides Planner app so that you have a complete chart plotter in one place. And we're increasingly kind of broadening our relationships with the chart plotter manufacturers like Marine and publishing our charts or making our charts available on their software as well. So yeah, obviously over the last 15, 20 years or so there's been huge technological change. As recently as 1999 we were still drawing charts by hand with pen and paper and cutting things out with Stanley knives. I remember many years of work experience, school work experience, sticking with bits of Pritt stick, and it was as basic as that. Whereas in the early 2000s we made the shift to a geographical information system based product called Caris, where it's a bit like Photoshop. People can get the data and make it look like a chart visually. About 5 years ago we moved across to a database-led system called Caris Hydrographic Production Database, and that's a hugely complex system, but it means that we can put all of the data in one place and then push it out as digital or paper products. We're continuing to kind of streamline systems and processes. So again, in 2016 we used to run up until 2016 we used to run a huge litho press in our warehouse, which was probably twice the size of this room, took 2 men to work it and operated with all sorts of kind of toxic inks and health and safety requirements. And it also meant that we used to have to print in print runs of thousands at a time, whereas now we moved across to the page-wide printer, which is HP wide format printer. It was originally designed for architect's plans, but we worked with HP to develop it into a full colour chart product, and now the UK Hydrographic Office also use those products. I don't know if this will work, but this is actually a moving video showing charts coming out of the. Let me see if I can get that to work. Doesn't want to do that. But it means we can do print on demand for other hydrographic offices as well. So we also supply Norwegian charts and French charts and Admiralty charts as print on demand. There it goes. So you can see how quickly it comes out. You can print about 30 charts a minute on it. We print more than 100,000 a year just off this one machine. Increasingly, technology allows us to customise what we do and personalise what we do. So we have been talking to various marina groups and charter companies about personalising their chart ranges for their customers, so they have a cover with their photo and their logo on it. We like what Ordnance Survey do, where you can upload your photo and then get your map cover printed with your boat on it. So these are the kind, neither of these things are in full production, but these are the kind of ideas that we're exploring, which have been enabled by changes in technology. The other big project that we're working on is Imray vector charts. Raster charts are good, but they are direct replicas of the paper charts, and to produce them takes as much work as producing a paper chart. Automatic data feeds from the hydrographic offices come in vector format, and the production database will allow us to produce a vector chart out of it. So we're in the process of working out how to make it look like an Imray chart and add that kind of extra Imray magic, the extra Imray information on top of the hydrographic office data. And it's a complex task and challenging, but we're well on the way. So that's the kind of big project that's been worked for about 2 years. that's the digital charts, back to the 1600s. This is a pilot book that's in our archive from Scandinavia. It shows what pilot books look like then, and actually pilot books don't look that different nowadays. They still have an inset plan or a diagram, and they have sailing directions telling you how to approach harbours and anchorages, where's safe to go. So again, we take inspiration from that, and we skip forward a few hundred years to Explore with Imray, which is our new generation pilot guide digitally. So we have about 100 pilot books in print, and we've digitised 30 of them so far, with about 16,000 location points of interest. So we've taken a snippet from each port when we digitised it, and you can find it as a pin on the map in Explore with Imray. We have added all sorts of different backgrounds, so you can have satellite imagery in the background. We just this summer launched our raster charts onto it as well, so it's becoming a kind of one-stop shop for pilot and charting information. Like lots of location-based apps, there are different types of pins that you click on for different kinds of information. So there are anchorages and moorings and pilotage information and almanac style information. You click on the pin and then you get a kind of book reader. You can also buy the printed guide at the same time if you want to. You can click on the inset plans and get the kind of enlarged information, and you can also see the photos that's in the book up on your screen. So it's really useful for passage planning. At the moment it's just online, but the next phase in that project is to make it into an app so that you can take it to sea with you. You can bookmark locations and filter locations, so you can begin to build an itinerary, and again we're developing this kind of itinerary tool within the app. The filters would allow you to kind of say, where is a marina with fuel, where's the next marina with fuel, you can just filter those and show that information on the map. There's an opportunity to also share your own information within this, so you can upload photos and little blog posts. Again, it can be a kind of journey tracker. This was when I went to meet some agents in Hamburg and ended up sitting by the Kiel Canal having a nice lunch. So blogged about it on there. This is the app showing the charts in the background, so again you can see the pilot book information as the pins overlaid on top of the charting information. Got to plug. There's the web address. Do sign up for a free trial. The point of Explore with Imray is to become a kind of hub of a community, and I feel as though that's what Imray has always done. We've always been a kind of safe haven for sailors and a kind of a guiding compass in a way, and I think that's the thing that will drive us going forward into the future. So please do keep buying our products and telling us all about your sailing trips, and thank you very much for having me.
Terrific. Thank you very much indeed, Lucy. I think the changes that you've been able to make and keep pace with technology is quite remarkable. I'm probably not the only one. When I actually prepare a route, I do it on a paper chart because I can't do it satisfactorily on a screen.
Yeah.
Then I will transfer it to the chart. I still need a paper chart. I find them valuable. As I do all the pilots. So I was sailed in Turkey quite a lot in the past.
Just a few times.
Yeah, just a few times. World Hike was absolutely essential. And I remember
Several editions, I'd say.
Yes, absolutely. I remember one particular point that he made he said, I followed the Gillette once taking a shortcut. And he said, I'm very glad that I was some way behind it because the Gillette actually went round. That sort of information you won't find anywhere. It's invaluable. I'm sure you've got lots of questions. Would anybody like to ask? Ian.
The question I have is one I find quite difficult to answer, but I just like your feeling, your intuition on the subject. There's a lot of talk now from what you might call official.
You have to speak up.
A lot of talk now from what you might call officialdom about navigation becoming more electronic. Those of us who have to teach other people navigation obviously have to make a decision at some point whether we completely leave the paper world and try and make it electronic, or will we operate in a hybrid world? And officialdom doesn't seem to know which direction the world is taking at the moment. What we need to do is not find ourselves in a position where we have to adapt very quickly. It would be a good idea to adapt in a more orderly fashion over a period of time. Do you have any views about where things are going, what standards are most likely to apply, and the timescale that might apply over as well?
Yeah, it's a complex subject that I could probably talk about all night, so do stop me. The official viewpoint is that from 2033 now, the UKHO are going to start withdrawing paper charts. They, in a very enthusiastic way, announced last summer that it would be from 2026. So already they've pushed that timeline back a long way. One of the reasons they've pushed the timeline back a long way is because the MCA they have the final say. They're the safety and guidance point. Imray and lots of other big chart manufacturers, so the digital, Navionics, Raymarine, and cruising organisations, Cruising Association, Royal Institute of Navigation, Royal Cruising Club, have been working with the MCA to set up a group called UK Standards of Navigation, and it's all about setting a digital standard, a kind of minimum standard that's required for electronic navigation. But it's hugely complex, and there are commercial tensions. Yeah, in the commercial, for us commercial publishers, we want points of difference between our competitors. If you have standardisation, you lose those points of difference. So I don't know when that's going to be resolved, but it's a kind of ongoing conversation, and we frequently get asked to come and go and give evidence at MCA events. For Imray, we have seen no decline in paper chart sales. Our sales are steady. Some areas grow, some areas shrink, but over the last 15 years, there's been no decline. So the advocacy go around saying paper chart sales are dead. We've seen an 80% drop in paper chart sales, but Imray hasn't seen that. We don't know whether it's because Imray is mopping up what the advocacy are not doing anymore, or whether because our market is leisure and the types of vessels that people sell are just different from commercial ships. So again, we're doing lots of research around that at the moment, and it's kind of informing the products that we're making going forwards. But our strategy is to produce hybrid products, which is why we invested a lot in the hydrographic production database, because we can do the cartography, we call it at source, so in the database, and then we can push out all sorts of different products, and it allows us to be kind of nimble and agile and respond to changes. It's a case of talking a lot and lobbying and ongoing conversations, so we shall see. Watch this space.
Right. Without the pain.
Yeah.
Comment on the question, but Tom Conlon will tell you, it might be quite right, that if you're doing a channel crossing for, say, Sherwood, what's it, 60 miles, so average boat 12 hours, you're going to have two tides, and your Navionics can't cope with more than one tide at a time, and then it will take with a great big sort of banana-shaped S-bend, And if you plot the tide one way and the tide the other way, you get the net, you get the course to steer.
Yeah.
You can't do that without a paper chart. So how will the electronics guys get around that?
They want to do auto routing, so they say that you can do that. I don't know that I trust it myself.
I don't think the author of your pilot agrees with it. I agree with him.
Yeah, I think my advice is, I'm by no means an expert sailor, but from what I hear, I wouldn't rely on electronics to do everything. I think there are other arguments for paper charts, like being able to spread a sheet out on a table and have a crew crowd around and talk about a voyage. And I think for Imray, we're conscious of the risk, and we're well aware that the world is going digital, but we don't know what the kind of baseline is for the decline in paper charts yet, and we'll have to just watch it really closely, and in the background make sure that our house is in order so that we can work digitally going forwards. I think as well, digital charting, the future of that is about making charts more of a kind of 3D experience, and about integrating technology like augmented reality and artificial intelligence, and it's about making life easier for the navigator in theory, or for the skipper. I think that trends of boat ownership have been, people are getting older as they're buying boats. I think people are getting older when they retire sometimes. Older customers going forward may want life to be easier than having to plot everything out. Equally, young customers are used to working with digital and they want an easy life too. So, it's a shifting market at the moment, and it's quite difficult to predict how it's going to go.
Michael.
There was a very interesting little article about 5-6 years ago now, about the American Navy. And the American Navy, until that time, had decided that it was no longer necessary to actually train navigating officers in ocean navigation by traditional means, sextants, whatever. And then suddenly they had a sudden frisson. What happens when the GPS gets switched off by foreign powers?
Yeah.
And suddenly decided that suddenly all American navigators had again to learn proper ocean navigation. One of the things that always worries me when I'm somewhere with lots of other boats is that most of them are using an app or something similar, which depends on GPS to find their way. Is there any talk in official circles about the risks of everything being tied into that?
Yeah, there are, and again that it makes making a standard very difficult, and I think that that's why there's reluctance to create this kind of standard for digital navigation, because the risks are high, and again, perhaps it's a conversation that we should be having with insurance companies, and they should actually be making it mandatory to carry paper charts. Some countries it is, but it isn't on leisure vessels in the UK. But yeah, there's talk about that. Equally, on the other side of things, people are saying, well, Elon Musk's bringing Starlink in, so that's going to mitigate the risk of the official GPS.
He's just getting off the cranes.
Exactly.
Lucy, when you turn your chart button on, it comes up with a message not to be used for navigation.
Yeah.
Okay? Because the charts, the leisure charts, are typically not approved by the hydrographic.
Yeah.
How do you stand on that? Where is that going? Because if we're being told on one hand we're going to get rid of red chart,
Yeah.
and on the other hand we're being told we're using our chart plotters from Marine using Navionics or whatever. It's like, where are we on that?
It's a period of transition, and I don't think that anyone knows what the right answer is yet. I think that, again, this UK Standards of Navigation Group has been formed, and there's lots of consultation with the commercial digital chart providers and with the hydrographic officers. Again, there's tension there. The hydrographic offices don't want their market to be taken solely by private chart producers.
So are they holding off on releasing the approved information? Because you can get electronic charts, the chart gets disappeared.
Yeah, you can.
But that's not what you get when you buy a leisure.
No, though the data that is in ECDIS charts, the Admiralty vector charts that the big ships use, we get that data feed, but we don't get it weekly as we should do. We only get it every 3 months, which just doesn't make any sense at all. And so Navionics, Imray, Raymarine, anyone who's producing digital charts gets data from the official sources that is 3 months out of date. So they then have to go through the weeding out the notices to mariners process to add the updated information in. Well, we all know that it's there on the Admiralty Vector Chart Service, and it's frustrating, and it's government bureaucracy, and don't get me started.
Sorry about the question.
Sorry.
You had a question, and one more.
Thank you, yes. Superb talk, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Unlike some people here, I plan regular voyages offshore using electronic charts solely.
Yeah.
And it took me a learning curve to do it. Because I was brought up with paper charts, I can do it, and it's my preferred method now. However, sometimes the GPS gets switched off, and I've been in situations where it has been switched off. Such as you've got a US 60 going past, or you're sailing in large parts of the world. Are you looking at the methods of bypassing this? I noticed one of your contributors from London, he sneaked off and went involved the agent.
Yes.
Now, it's not perfect, but he does allow manual chart copying. Are you looking at something like this in the future?
Yeah, again, there's conversation at the moment about whether Imray pour our hearts into producing software and apps that run the charting, or whether our strength is actually really the charts themselves and the content. And in order to do both, we need to grow. The appetite's there to do that, but it's expensive and complicated. So it's a kind of, again, a transition period. We're also, the strategy is also to make sure that we are working with people like Angel Nav or Raymarine or the third parties who have already got software developed to get our charts and our data into those products, so that we continue being relevant that way as well as the actual. I don't think any of us at Imray at the moment have the skills to deal with auto routing software. It's just not what we do. So
I must say, I hate auto.
yeah.
So you had a question?
Oh yes, thank you for a fascinating talk. My question is about digital navigation, and there has been some criticism that to see everything on a digital map you have to scan through the whole range from all different levels of magnification, and a lot of people don't. And I wondered if you could offer some guidance as to what rules you use for what you include at different levels of magnification, what we won't see at certain levels, and what we will see at certain levels. So is there a sort of set formula for that?
We have a kind of, we call it a style guide, which is more complex than a style guide, but we for example, on a small scale passage chart covering a large area, the detail that we would show of lights is much reduced, so we would just include the key major navigational lights, and we would take out the harbour lights, for example. On a vector chart, all that data would still be there, and we can zoom in and out to see that. When we get to a larger scale, we have kind of scale bands, so we say between 1 to 0 and 1 to 15,000, we show really detailed sectored lights with all the kind of information in a lot of detail. Once you start getting to 1 to 350,000, the sectors are portrayed in a different way. So we've got, this is kind of built into our database now, but it's a kind of set of rules as to what should show at what scales.
Thank you very much, Lucy. We're enormously grateful to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Yes.
And we wish you every success. Lucy will be joining us for dinner, which will be at 8:15 in the dining room. And I'm sure if there are other questions, I do appreciate one or two people may have them. I'm sure you'll be kind enough to deal with them.
I love
Christmas.
talking about
There
this
are some
stuff.
there are some catalogues, and I'm not quite sure whether they're on there if
just
anybody
about,
wants them. So thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Brilliant.